This show contains general information about legal matters. This information is not advice and should not be treated as such. If you have any specific questions about any legal matter, you should consult your attorney or other professional legal services provider. Be advised that while Cheapskate is a lawyer, he is not your lawyer. Also, Jimmy Franks is an idiot, and you should never take his advice.
You're listening to Song Crimes, where we turn Nolo Contendere into YOLO Contendere. I'm professional idiot Jimmy Franks, along with real-life attorney Cheapskate. We explore the statements and confessions made by songwriters in popular music and pass judgment on those who choose to operate outside of the law. Court is now in session. This episode, we're going to be talking about housing law, landlord-tenant relations, things of that nature. And Cheapskate, you have a little bit of experience in that area, right?
I do. I mostly handle housing discrimination law at my current job. I've done a little bit of landlord-tenant in the past. I helped try to draft a landlord-tenant law at my old job because I was living in a place where there were no landlord-tenant laws, because nobody cared.
Wow. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
This was out in the territories where the only people who were renters were people who were not from there and didn't have a lot of political power. Most of the people in the legislature were landlords. They didn't really care. They weren't going to lose votes by not having landlord-tenant law, so they mostly just said, you guys do whatever. There is a uniform landlord-tenant act that's in effect in about 20 states, and I said, hey, guys, it might be a good idea to adopt this if you want any of your renters to stick around for a while, but they had other priorities.
Thanks for looking out for the little guy.
Well, the little guy included me.
First on the docket today is a classic from the 80s, Autograph's Turn Up the Radio. Our shared love of good times, classic tunes, and pedantry is what brought us together for this show. But sometimes maybe turning the radio up too loud can be an issue for, your neighbors, for example. And this song is all about rocking out hard and loud. The song starts with, I'm working hard, you're working too, we do it every day. This guy, his philosophy in life is things go better with rock. The only time I turn it down is when I'm sleeping it off. So right there in the lyrics, he's pretty much blasting his radio from when he gets home, let's say at 5 p.m. until he gets to bed, which I'm guessing if he likes to rock and party, maybe not till 1 or 2 in the morning. So can we talk a little bit about noise disturbance?
I mean, he does say earlier in the lyrics, for every minute I have to work, I need a minute of play. So assuming he's working 8 hours a day, then he is playing the radio at a pretty high volume for 8 hours a day.
Okay. So if he's on a standard 9 to 5, he gets home at 5. So he's rocking out from 5 p.m. till 1 a.m., which I think that's going to cut into somebody's quiet enjoyment of their dwelling.
Right, especially with Autograph. They're a band that's not only from California, they're from Pasadena, which is a very ritzy suburb of Los Angeles. California takes noise control very seriously. They have a state office of noise control, and they say, look, every city has to develop its own noise ordinance to prevent people from going deaf. In Pasadena, the municipal ordinance says you can't do anything that is more than 5 decibels over the ambient noise level.
Oh, that's very conservative.
Oh, it's very conservative. And if you're in an apartment building, there's a special rule there that caps you at 60 decibels during the day and 50 decibels at night, which is 60 decibels is maybe your TV at somewhat high volume. Pasadena very much wants to be a quiet city. Now, there is an exception written into their municipal ordinance for the Rose Bowl, which takes place in Pasadena.
Just the Rose Bowl. One day a year you can go nuts.
Right, and the last time my team went to the Rose Bowl, we got spanked, so I would have loved to have seen the Pasadena cops come in and arrest the Stanford Marching Band for violating the noise ordinance.
This song is all about him turning up the radio. That's all he wants, is demanding of those around him, is to turn up the radio, and I quote, I need the music, got to give me some more.
Yeah, and this is only one of many hair metal songs that are proclaiming the same message. This is just the one that we think is doing it the most effectively.
Sure, sure. And later on, he goes on to sing daytime, nighttime, anytime, things go better with rock. What recourse do his neighbors have, assuming that he's in an apartment or has a close neighbor? I mean, they're calling the cops on him. He's getting cited.
Even without him getting cited from the city for violations of the noise ordinance, if they are both members of the same organization or part of the same building, so if they are renting from the same landlord, if they are part of the same condo association, if they're part of the same homeowners association, the neighbor's recourse is to file a complaint with the landlord and say, look, this guy is making it impossible for me to live here because it's just too darn loud. And the landlord has a responsibility to try to get autographed to knock it off. And if they don't, the renter or neighbor or whoever gets to go to court and say, look, I want a court injunction saying you guys got to stop this.
Let's pass judgment on autograph. Guilty or not guilty?
It sounds like they're guilty.
Guilty of, I guess, what would they be guilty of here? Just general noise disturbance or?
Yeah, violation of the city noise ordinance.
Okay. Well, I sentence autograph to getting some Bluetooth headphones so that they can rock out daytime, nighttime, or anytime in the privacy of their own home without disturbing their neighbors.
And I am going to sentence autograph to performing at the Rose Bowl, where their noise is not going to cause a problem.
Daytime, nighttime, once a year. Things go better with rock. Lonesome George, Thorogood, and the Delaware Destroyers. This is a good song to play if you want to make the most of your money at the jukebox at the bar.
One bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
One bourbon, one scotch, one beer. I think it clocks in around 8 minutes.
Not quite in like prog rock territory, but it's as close as you're going to get with the blues.
So this is a long song. I mean, it's really almost a spoken word performance. He doesn't really get into singing, if you call George Thorogood a singer, until like 2/3 of the way through the tune. So he tells a story.
It's about the Houseman Blues.
We want to save some time for the deliberation. So I'm gonna read a little bit. I'm not gonna do the whole 7 minutes, but we'll try to hit the salient points. I come home one Friday, had to tell the landlady I'd lost my job. She said, that don't confront me long as I get my money next Friday. And the landlady says, out the door you go, George, if you don't have the rent. So can she begin eviction proceedings at this time?
So in Delaware, when you have a tenant and they don't pay rent, you have to give them a written notice that says, look, you got 5 days to pay up or the lease is terminated. So if the time between when she says you got the rent money yet and the time when he gets out is at least 5 days, and assuming she's done it in writing, so a written notice of non-confrontal, then she may have properly started the eviction proceeding.
He begins negotiations with the landlady at this point. He says, so I goes to the landlady. I said, you let me slide? I'll have the rent for you in a month. He's saying, I'll have some money for you. Maybe we can work out an installment plan or some kind of payment schedule. So said, let me slide on it. I noticed when I come home in the evening, she ain't got nothing nice to say to me. But for 5 years, she was so nice. Lord, she was lovey-dovey. All right, lovey-dovey here. I'm going to say maybe she was sweet on him. Maybe she was flirting. That seems to be inappropriate behavior in a landlord-tenant relationship.
That's very inappropriate in a landlord-tenant relationship because they have a key to where you live.
Right.
So,
right.
So if the landlord is hassling him enough that it's impossible for him to live at this place because she's just too lovey-dovey, or if she's making letting it slide contingent upon sexual favors, then she's actually violating the Federal Fair Housing Act. That counts as sex discrimination.
So we don't have to go too far to see maybe another infraction here.
Right.
He comes home one particular evening. The landlady said, you got the rent money yet? He said, no, can't find no job. Therefore, I ain't got no money to pay the rent. Then she starts speculating as to his behavior. She says, I don't believe you're trying to find no jobs. Said, I seen you today, was standing on the corner leaning up against a post. So she's making value judgments on his character. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but if they determine that you're a bad credit risk, they don't necessarily need to lease to you, right?
Right. Now, there are some
But-
places that have minor exceptions. Like, there are some places that have in the law you can't discriminate based on the source of income. So, in some parts of the country, a landlord can say, if you're receiving federal rental assistance, I don't want to rent to you. Or if your money's coming off of a certain kind of thing rather than a job, I'm not going to rent to you.
A week has passed. They have come to some agreement on a payment schedule. And now she's threatening to throw him out again because he doesn't have a job right now. Is that discrimination? Is that bad behavior on the part of the landlady to get in his business like that? And she's kind of haranguing him over an agreement they'd already made.
And it's probably just bad behavior unless George has some kind of disability that would prevent him from getting a job. Now, he does say, I'm tired, I've been walking all day. Maybe he has something horribly wrong with his feet that makes it impossible to work.
So next in George's tale of woe, he seeks out a friend that maybe he can couch surf on, doesn't have any success. So he returns back to his apartment, and I quote, "So I go back home, I tell the landlady I got my job, I'm going to pay the rent." She said, "Yeah?" I said, "Oh, yeah." Then she was so nice. Lord, she was lovey-dovey. There it is again. So he goes up in his room, packs up his things, and he goes and admits that he's skipping out on his rent, skipping out, probably breaking his lease with back rent owed. What are we looking at here?
So if the landlady had presented him with this 5-day notice of non-confrontal that we described earlier, then the lease has successfully ended when he didn't pay. So he's not on the hook for any additional charges after that 5 days. If not, then when George is getting out under the Delaware Code, he is wrongfully quitting the rental unit and unequivocally indicating by words or deeds his intention not to resume tenancy, which means he's now liable for the remaining rent for this month, plus any expenses that the landlady incurs in re-renting this unit.
Okay, so I mean they'll send him to collections basically, but he hasn't really broken any laws yet. This is more of a civil matter.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything illegal here.
He has money on him. I guess that's the other thing, is that he presumably has some liquid assets, because he spends the next 4 minutes of the song just drinking, singing about drinking, and drinking some more. So yeah, I guess guilty or not guilty, George Thorogood and the Delaware Destroyers.
Well, it's hard to say guilty or not guilty because he hasn't done anything that's a criminal offense, but it sounds to me like he's probably liable for the back rent.
But that's that is a civil matter. He's probably going to blow up his credit score, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, then the court recommends that George Thorogood consult a credit counselor and get his financial life in order and set himself up for success in the future.
That's a good call, and I am going to recommend that George spend a few days volunteering at a homeless shelter to help give him a little more perspective on the fragility of housing in the United States.
So now we take up the matter of the Beastie Boys, Fight for Your Right.
You gotta fight for your right to party.
Looking at the lyrics versus the chorus, they're two kind of separate things, where in the lyrics you've just got some kids with a bad attitude, but the chorus is all about fighting for your right to party. There's not a lot of partying going on in the song, but they are adamant about their party rights being infringed upon. So
yeah, I wonder if they originally wrote this as two different songs and then kind of stitched the best parts of the two of them together.
oh yeah, like Fleetwood Mac's The Chain.
Yeah.
Is there a right to party? What is your right to party?
Well, there is sort of a right to party, maybe. I mean, the First Amendment covers the right to have an assembly, and it covers the right to belong to organizations. So you are free to have a party. You're free to demonstrate in favor of holding parties, not literally fighting, but, campaigning for your right to party. But this being the First Amendment, which starts with Congress shall make no law, that means that only applies to the government or government-funded organizations. So you may have a right against the government to party, but you don't have a right to prevent your parents from stopping you from holding this party.
But the actual fight for your right to party took place during the Revolutionary War.
It did, yes, because the British government was outlawing organizations like the Sons of Liberty and other political campaign groups, and the Founding Fathers said, no, we need the right to party. We need the right to throw people's tea in the harbor.
That sounds like a party.
USA, USA.
So in the second verse, your pop caught you smoking, and he said no way. That hypocrite smokes 2 packs a day. Man, living at home is such a drag. Now your mom threw away your best porno mag. So let's talk a little bit about underage smoking and underage possession of pornography. Assuming that these are minors, or they're under the age of 18, because it just sounds like they're sullen teenagers.
Yeah.
What's going on here? It seems like their father is well within their rights to throw away cigarettes or to tell them to stop smoking, discourage it. That's just good parenting.
Oh, yeah. So Beastie Boys, famously from Brooklyn, and in the city of New York, the legal age for smoking is 21 and not 18 like in most of the rest of the country. That's by city ordinance. But the control there is a control on sale of tobacco products and not on use. So assuming that the Beastie Boys just kind of found these cigarettes lying around, I couldn't find anything that would make it illegal for them to smoke.
Is there a law in the books about underage possession of pornography?
In New York, the law isn't about possessing pornography when you're underage. It's about selling or distributing it.
So you can buy it?
You could buy it, but you wouldn't be punished. The guy who would be punished would be the guy who sold it to you.
Got it. Okay.
It's illegal to sell or distribute porno mags to people under age 17 in New York. So if they found legendary Woods porn, they could keep it.
They found a copy of Hustler rolled up in a tree stump in Central Park.
Right. Then they are free to keep it until mom throws it away.
Okay. So beyond that, nothing too scandalous. We're like 1-1 on convictions today. So what charges can we levy against Misters Diamond, Yauch, and Horowitz?
Based on the song, I don't think we can charge him with anything.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Oh, man. I was really hoping to get him. We'll get him next time.
We'll get him when they commit sabotage.
Well, the court recommends that the Beastie Boys and the Beastie Boys' parents enter into collaborative dispute resolution and maybe just some family therapy sessions so that they're communicating and connecting in a meaningful way.
That's a good idea, and I think the Beastie Boys should channel their desire to assemble and campaign into a more productive area by perhaps joining some sort of local political campaign group, volunteer for somebody who's running for city council.
Thanks to our announcer, Deb Slater. If there's a song you'd like for us to feature, send your song ideas to songcrimes@gmail.com. If you like the songs you hear, buy them on iTunes, or even better, support your local independent music store. And if you like the rest of the show, please subscribe, rate, review, and tell people about the show. And as always, don't do anything stupid, but if you do, keep your mouth shut. Court is adjourned.
Would you like to go undercover to fight discrimination? If so, you can become a fair housing tester. Find your local fair housing organization at nationalfairhousing.org.